is the president of the All China Women's Federation, one of the top-ranking women in the Chinese government, and witness to the major changes in women's status since the Communist Revolution. Among the first laws passed by Chairman Mao's government were statutes banning foot binding, bride selling, dowries, polygamy, and concubines. Women were invited to leave the home and join the labor force. Mao spoke those famous words, "Women hold up half the sky." If the statistics are any indication, communism has been good for women.
Constantly at colleges and at government buildings in Canada, England, the U.S., they're putting up Mao statues. That's been in the news. At city halls, they're saying how great he is. I've seen 3 different Obama czars say Mao is good. Hugo Chavez is good because he's censoring the media and that we need to censor our media. China has forced abortion with women. Women are used as slaves in the factories. And it was declassified, of course, that the CIA financed the women's movement here in the United States. It sounded good on the surface, so they could break up the family, so women wouldn't be at home, so they could literally get everybody paying taxes and have the state start raising people's children. The same globalist model that the West funded in communist China is now being implemented here. And 3 months ago at Copenhagen, they called for a global one-child policy modeled after China and admitted that China is the UN model. The U.S. and the top globalists in the mid-'70s made deals with China and moved all our technologies over there because they would adopt the globalist program. Then China would be built up into an industrial colossus to destroy all competition because no one can compete with 1,500,000,000 slaves. And that's what they're just about, 1,500,000,000. India, over 1 billion. It is just incredible what's going on. And to have the media praising a mass murderer is unprecedented. Now, Wayne Paul is a CPA, brother of Congressman Ron Paul. He is a in-the-Fed activist, a patriot of many decades, exposing the IRS, that is a collection agency for the Federal Reserve. And he joins us for the next 50 minutes here today. We'll also open the phones up and cover other news and get Wayne Paul's take on what's going on. But, Wayne, did you ever think you'd see CNN praising the greatest mass murderer in world history?
Never in my lifetime would I have thought that.
Wayne, so much has happened in your decades of fighting the New World Order. Break down for people your worldview, your family's worldview, and basically define the New World Order. And we've come to that critical juncture now where the big private central banks are openly bankrupting the planet, openly announcing world government.
Yeah, and I think we all have to sit back and take a look at what's going on, recognizing the fact that 10 years ago, had Alex Jones had such an idea on a radio station, he probably couldn't get enough sponsors to have him on. Yet today it makes sense with the understanding of our economic condition and the control of the major banking cartels throughout the world that controls everything we do. It's interesting to me that today, educationally, we as a people are much wiser today about the concept of a new world order and what they're doing to our individual liberties and freedom, that I think it's a fantastic time to be living just to see the changes in the understanding that the people have that they didn't have 10 years ago.
Wayne Paul, you're in the Obama deception. I interviewed you up at an In the Fed rally that it later came out the Army was watching because we're such evil Americans that want to get these foreign banks off our backs. And you talked about how the bankers took over, the War Powers Act, what Social Security really is, how the bankers are able to violate the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Break it down in more detail here on the air today, exactly what we're facing and how our form of government our republic really got overthrown back in 1933?
Well, it really goes back further than 1933. It goes back to 1913 when the Federal Reserve Act was first passed. When that happened, the Congress, in effect, gave up our liberties as it relates to our rights to banking and our rights to exchange property for services. And it took only 20 years, from 1913 to 1933, before our federal government was bankrupt. They spent more money and borrowed more money from the Federal Reserve in the first 20 years of the Reserve's existence that in 1933, Roosevelt declared the United States was bankrupt. So since that time, it's the Federal Reserve banking cartel that has manipulated or controlled whatever they saw fit for our economy and our life. And it's taken from 1933 to present for those of us who have been studying and researching this come to understand and are able to teach it to other people. So we now have to start that change. Now, one of the changes that's going on dramatically right now are the various states that are passing state laws as it relates to banking, as it relates to gun control, as it relates to carrying firearms. And they're saying to the federal government, constitutionally, you can't come into this state and tell us whether we can have a gun or not. And you can't come into this state and tell us that if we bank within the state, we don't have to be under the federal regulations. All these things are exciting in terms of the changes that are taking place today.
Well, expanding on that, you're absolutely right. But 1933 was when they were able to bankrupt us and bring us into emergency rule. 1913 was when they got their beachhead. And then just a few years later, they were able to bring us into receivership. Then they issued the Social Security card that was literally the debt servant system. And that's when they began making us their dependents and expanding it. And so we've been under their system since 33 completely, under their thumb since 33. And all we've seen since then is a progression of social engineering, booms and bust, as the banks mass more and more power. And now they brag that they've gotten more power out of the banker bailout. They're establishing a bank of the world, a global constitution. We'll pay our carbon taxes to the bankers. They admit this is meant to shut down competition, vertically consolidate and integrate the economy into a worldwide monopoly controlled by this cartel. And you're right. The states are waking up. The people are waking up. We've never seen such an awakening. It's passed the House. Your brother's bill, Congressman Ron Paul, who joined us yesterday, to audit the private Federal Reserve. But I believe they're going to strike back. And I believe they're going to do that, Wayne, through staging crises and staging wars and staging terror attacks to be blamed on the Tea Parties and the Fed groups. What's your take on that?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because if you look at our gubernatorial race here in Texas alone, and when the minority staunch Texan was running against the two incumbents, she was put on a show, and the first thing the guy said is, "Are you a believer? Are you a truther as it relates to 9/11?" Unfortunately, that didn't have anything to do with the race in Texas, but it was used to make her look bad. But the truth be known that whether it's 9/11, whether it's the killing that took place in Waco, Ruby Ridge, all of these are suspect as a basis to eliminate a little more of our freedom.